I was enjoying my coffee at the dining table when Kathy, with a peculiar look, sat down across from me. Though I had no clue what it might be, I could sense that something was approaching. I have been having an affair with my boss, Alex, she continued, taking a long breath. Without the hesitancy or stuttering he would have anticipated from someone making such a confession, the words were direct. She didn't seem guilty or even sorry. Rather, she described it as if it were a decision he had to make. As if it were a consolation prize, she assured him. I will see to it that you get your share of physical intimacy. Ben, I'll make sure you're included, but you must understand. My chest began to fill with a mixture of insult and incredulity. I almost laughed at the ridiculousness of it, but I forced myself to look her in the eyes instead. Sitting across from me was a lady I had been married to for 3 years, who calmly suggested that we stay married while she continued to have an affair. I questioned if I had ever really known her. I was unable to contain myself after a brief period of stillness. I shook my head and let out a quick, dry chuckle. You don't know me at all, Kathy, so you can't simply throw your choices in my face and expect me to accept your affair if you think I'll sit here and go along with this. Your doormat is not me. You must locate a divorce attorney. She looked back at me, taken aback by my answer. Her countenance altered when she realized I was serious, even though she may have assumed I would be docile or that I needed her enough to put up with anything. She didn't think I would be that direct. Kathy seemed glum as I moved my chair back, prepared to go. Her eyes had a threatening quality to them that I had never noticed before. Her voice was calm and quiet as she leaned forward. Ben, have a seat. You can't simply leave this discussion now. I paused and gave her a glance. Her lips formed a chilly, almost self-satisfied grin as she looked directly into my eyes. Do you really believe that you can simply go out, get a lawyer, and stop interacting with me? I said, she said. No, Ben. This isn't going to work that way. I gazed at her. Really? Do you believe your threats will be effective? It will, she murmured, scooting closer. I will destroy you if you attempt to leave me in this manner. You get it? To the cops, I will go. I'll let them know you struck me, that I was threatened by you. Her tone was relaxed, even informal. Ben, they'll believe me. Who will they trust, in your opinion? An accountant no one has ever heard of, or a recognized lawyer? She watched me with a tilt of her head. I'll make sure you have nothing left, even if you believe you'll simply get over it and go on. I'll make sure you're pleading with me to return. The fact that this was the same guy I had married astounded me. I felt as if I was looking into the eyes of a complete stranger who had no interest in ruining all of my hard-earned money and accomplishments. She seemed to be certain that I wouldn't dare risk the nightmare she was promising, as if she already knew I would give in. So, this is how it's going to go, she said. I'll take everything from you and burn everything to the ground, or you'll remain, play along, and keep your mouth shut. Ben, it's up to you. Kathy reclined back in her chair as like she had made up her mind, but I was still in shock from her warning. With a smug expression on her face, she crossed her arms. Oh, and one more thing, Ben, she continued in a condescending tone. It's probably time for you to meet Alex. He will visit tomorrow. I blinked, hardly paying attention to what she said. Are you really so stupid? I heard you. Her grin was twisted and contemptuous. I want you to behave yourself, well, since he wants to meet you. Ben, be a good boy to me. I remained mute and waited for her to finish, even though the humiliation was quite painful. As if she were giving instructions on a routine domestic task, she went on, I expect you to make him comfortable, offer him a drink, maybe even a snack. Who knows? He could even be kind to you. Anger was rising under the table, and I tightened my hands, but I made myself keep quiet. She was staring at me and challenging me to resist, to say anything, to do anything that would increase her control over me. Kathy, do you think it's a good idea? What gives you the impression that you can do this? I spoke in a composed tone. Kathy moved closer, and I saw a hardness that had replaced her grin. Ben, because I can. I'll do what I want since this is my life. And you'll follow my instructions to the letter if you want to maintain any semblance of respect. You and Alex should make a good impression since I'll see you here tomorrow. Do you know what Newton's rules of physics are, Kathy? There is an equal and opposite response to every action. On the other hand, you could not like the activity with me. The rest is up to you. My last piece of advice is to consult your lawyer and avoid making things complicated. The marriage is finished. While I'm still letting you stroll, leave. I have an alpha man in my life. Therefore, your threats will never be effective. You are nothing. She then stood up and walked out of the room. leaving me by myself. It was obvious. This was a battleground now, not a marriage, and I had to fight back. I was drinking a glass of Jack Daniels by myself in the living room the next evening, trying to prepare myself for the ridiculousness that was about to happen. I heard the front door open and Kathy welcome him with a phony smile. As she walked him into the room, her hand resting on his shoulder as if he were a valuable trophy, I took a long drink. When I first saw him, Alex was shorter than I had anticipated. Fat. Before I could stop myself, I let out the chuckle that was building in my chest. I found the whole situation so absurd that it was hard to believe. Was this the alleged alpha for whom Kathy had thrown everything? The chuckle became to a sneer as I shook my head and looked him up and down. He was shorter than Kathy and just 5 feet tall. This leprechaun. With a smile on my face that I could hardly contain, I pointed at him. Kathy, is he the man you refer to as an alpha male? If he wears a green outfit, he may be a leprechaun for Halloween without ever dressing up. Kathy struggled to conceal the glint of annoyance that briefly appeared on her face as her grin faltered. Watch your mouth, Ben, she said in a chilly, quiet voice. Everything you're not, Alex is. Self-assured and forceful. A true alpha male. Oh, really? I remarked, feeling a surge of indignation as I leaned back and took another sip of my drink. Maybe I was giving you too much credit. Kathy, if this is how you saw an alpha. Gazing at Kathy as if seeking a clue, Alex turned to face me. It was difficult not to find the whole incident a bit funny, and I could tell he wasn't expecting me to laugh at him. How does it feel to come into my house and play house with my wife? I said, unable to resist. Tell me, Alex. His cheeks flushed, his confidence eroding, and he gave Kathy another doubtful glance. Ben, enough. Kathy's eyes were burning as she snarled. I instructed you to show respect. Honorable, I said with a laugh devoid of humor. Am I expected to show respect? You want me to roll over in plain ice after bringing this hobbit in and hurling him in my face? It didn't matter that I could tell she was fuming. Alex's voice was brimming with rage, yet his cheeks flushed as he struggled to remain calm. Listen, Ben, he replied in a snarky, arrogant tone. Do you really believe that you will just ignore this? Not in my opinion. I've discussed it with Kathy, and we'll make sure you don't get anything. I'll see to it that she gets everything during the divorce, even the clothing on your back. A smug look appeared on his face as he took a step closer. By the way, I'll be sharing your bed with her after we're done here tonight. I remained firm, looking him in the eye without seeming threatened. Alex, really? Do you really believe you can simply come in here, threaten me, and be done with me? Believe me, he muttered, waving his hand dismissively. We'll take everything. The home, the vehicle, the money from your work. We'll also make sure you regret confronting her at all. I arched an eyebrow. The home? Barely able to control my laughter, I asked. Alex, that home isn't even mine. It was Mom's property. I just live here. It won't bring you any money. For a little time, Alex's visage wavered, but he soon recovered and moved on to his next weapon. Okay, but we'll still take the money from your work. I'll make sure you're paying Kathy for the rest of your life because she deserves it. As I took another leisurely sip of my drink, I couldn't help but smile. I'm sorry to let you down, Alex, but I've already quit. What? At last? Alex's arrogant face broke, and his gaze strayed to Kathy as if she had somehow deceived him. He seemed to be caught entirely off guard. That's right, I said, feeling a wave of fulfillment. Therefore, you have nothing to rely on, no possessions, no employment, and no income. Your little strategy isn't nearly as solid as you believed, I suppose. Alex stood there, trying to take in what had happened, while Kathy looked at me, obviously taken aback and angry. As he realized that the paycheck he had anticipated was evaporating, I could see the wheels spinning in his mind. I glanced between them, feeling once again in charge of my own life. So, Alex, I remarked in a calm but direct tone, why don't you reconsider what you believe you are stealing from me? Because it seems like you are the one with nothing from where I am. Alex moved closer, his voice brimming with conceit, and his face contorted into a smug smile. He nearly taunted me by saying, Ben, you're not in charge here. Now that I'm in charge, you'll follow instructions. Actually, I believe I'll take Kathy to your bed upstairs at this very now. You can't do anything about it. My blood boiled as I stared him in the eyes and carefully put down my drink. Alex, I murmured, maintaining a steady tone. I'm telling you to leave my residence. Now. Instead, he made a loud, mocking sound as he chuckled, and before I could respond, He gave me a hard smack across the face. Although the smack hurt, the rage it sparked within of me was something else. He sat up straight and grinned at me, obviously having fun. Do you truly believe you can defeat me? He scoffed. You and other guys are nothing more than air. Ben, I'm the genuine stuff, and I can ruin you. You are nothing. Men like me are in charge, and if you do anything, I'll make sure you rot in prison. By the time I'm through with you, you'll be pleading for forgiveness. I smiled even though the smack hurt. Something within Ben snapped as he felt the smack sear his face. He attempted to maintain his composure, but all the humiliation, the anger, and the months of contempt poured over. With his fists clenched and his voice firm and low, he rose from his chair. Alex, do you believe you're the genuine deal? Alex staggered backwards, hardly able to react before Ben struck him again and again after his fist struck his jaw. Ben unleashed the words he'd been suppressing with each hit. Alex, do you believe you're the genuine deal? A grim resolve descended over him as he spoke. Men who are real don't strive to ruin other people's life. Real guys don't enter someone else's house and pretend to be the owners. Additionally, they do not destroy marriages for personal gain. Alex, you're nothing. Families are protected by real males. Ben heard a gratifying snap as another punch landed right on Alex's ribcage. Honest guys are honest. Now that he was gasping, Alex tried to defend himself by raising his hands, but Ben persisted. Every blow was a relief. The rage that had been building for so long was exorcism-like for everyone. At last, Ben took Alex in his arms, met his eyes, and said, I am the man, not an alpha or a beta. He then lifted Ben over his head and smashed him to the ground. Alex lay on the ground, battered and injured, breathing heavily and feeling his chest heave. Ben stepped back and stared down at the guy who had believed he could enter his life and destroy it. For a few minutes, Kathy remained still, her eyes wide with shock as she saw Alex fall to the ground, injured and covered in blood. Her hands shook as she felt a mixture of dread and wrath. She hurried toward Ben without thinking, her fists flying as she pounded pointlessly on his back to get him to stop. However, a woman's strong hold grabbed her wrists and pulled her back before she could deliver another blow. Kathy screamed in shock as she was yanked off her feet and spun around to confront her assailant. She was being held by a tall lady with short, cut hair and a fierce, unblinking stare. Her hold on Kathy's wrists was relentless, like iron. Despite Kathy's best efforts, the lady was too powerful and moved with precision, speed, and control. Kathy jerked her arms and yelled, Let me go. But the woman's grip tightened. No, Linda responded in a quiet, authoritative voice. You're finished. Kathy was forced on her knees as Linda, with almost alarming ease, wrenched her arms behind her. Unable to resist, Kathy gasped as Linda slammed her down on the floor next to Alex with the weight of her body. But Linda wasn't finished yet. She took a step back, evaluating Kathy for a minute before launching into a barrage of vicious strikes with ruthless accuracy. Kathy felt her fists strike her stomach and chest with unwavering intensity. Only someone skilled in hand-to-hand fighting could deliver the combination of speed and force that she does. Kathy was so exhausted from each blow that she could hardly breathe in between them. Kathy made an ineffective attempt to protect herself. Linda was unrelenting and unstoppable, moving like a hurricane. As she slammed into Kathy, the ex-Marine demonstrated that she was no stranger to combat. Ben stayed there for a time, still gasping for air, not knowing what had occurred. He turned to face Linda, who stood tall, composed, and self-assured, as if she had just easily defeated a menace. With grim pleasure, Linda replied, I don't think she's going to be causing you any more problems, observing Kathy as she lay there, unable to breathe. She has seen the consequences of interacting with the wrong people firsthand. Since he could never put his hand on a woman, Ben thanked Linda for helping him with Kathy and remaining concealed throughout the altercation. Shortly after Linda had done with Kathy and Alex, the police and ambulances hurried into the home, their sirens blaring in the background. Ben watched as they took over the scene while standing in the corner and attempting to regain his balance. Alex's face was bloodied and swollen, and he was hardly aware. Kathy's eyes were wide with a mixture of dread and anger as she sat up. The actual consequences would start at the hospital, when they were both quickly placed into ambulances and driven away. The cops questioned them more once they got there. Despite the discomfort, Alex tried to establish himself while still feeling dazed from the pounding. His voice was trembling but full of bravado as he sat upright on a hospital bed. With the last of his remaining courage, Alex declared, "I want to file a complaint against Ben. I want charges brought against him because he assaulted me in cold blood." The officer, a middle-aged guy with a serious expression, slowly and deliberately closed his notepad while keeping his eyes on Alex. "Are you certain about that?" With a low voice and a tone that was significantly colder than before, the officer questioned. "I take it you know who you're referring to?" Alex was perplexed as he attempted to recover some control of the situation. "What are you discussing?" As he talked, the cop lowered his voice and leaned closer. Ben used to ride a motorcycle and was a member of a prominent biker gang. He is the kind of person you don't want to mess with. You will be dealing with more than just him if you submit that complaint. All of them will be on your plate. The understanding made Alex's eyes widen, his throat constrict, and his swagger crumble. The policeman didn't end there. With a harsh tone, the officer went on to discuss this beating. "Compared to what may happen to you if you turn this into a police issue, it would be easy. Are you strong enough to face them all? Because if you push this, I promise you that Ben won't be the only one at your door." Alex swallowed, his hands suddenly trembling. He gave the officer a quick look before turning to face his own damaged and wounded body. He could still see the picture of Ben's hands, the way they had pounded him into submission. However, he was suddenly afraid at the thought of facing a whole group of motorcyclists, who most likely had no trouble going beyond a few punches. Alex's face became white. His gaze flitted over the space, as if seeking a way out. However, there was none. The officer's words had been on his mind constantly. One should not take Ben and his group lightly. "No." Alex's voice trembled as he murmured, "I won't file anything, sorry. Don't remember what I said." His bluster had vanished, to be replaced by a consuming fear. With a nod, the officer snapped his notepad shut and got to his feet. "Well done. I would suggest that you avoid Ben and everyone associated with him. You don't want to have any more regrets about this." Alex didn't answer. His thoughts were already racing with anxiety about what may happen next. One thing was certain, even though he had no clue what he had gotten himself into. It was far from over. Furthermore, he wasn't prepared to deal with the fallout from upsetting someone like Ben. Even worse, his colleagues. With a profound rage still burning inside of her, Kathy stood outside the hospital room, her face battered but mostly undamaged. She was resolved to face Alex and ensure that they both followed the plan. Despite being assaulted and humiliated, she refused to allow Ben get away with it. She would demolish him, file for divorce, and leave him with nothing. At least that was the idea. Her steps were deliberate as she entered Alex's room. His eyes remained keen despite the wounds and swelling all over his face as he sat on the bed. He was obviously still traumatized from the thrashing he had received earlier, and he stared up at Kathy when he spotted her. Kathy was prepared to snap, to insist that they maintain their resolve and complete the task at hand. However, she was surprised by Alex's response as soon as she entered. Alex remarked in a raspy voice, "Kathy, leave me alone. I no longer want to be involved with this. I cherish my life. We shouldn't have been involved with what you've gotten us into. It's larger than I anticipated." Stunned, Kathy gazed at him. "What are you discussing?" She moved closer and commanded, "This is still feasible. Take everything. I'll divorce him." "No." Alex interrupted her, his terrified eyes wide. "You're not understanding. You must abandon everything, leave Ben, and leave town if you value your life." "Right now?" Kathy blinked, perplexed. "What do you say? Leave him? What do you mean?" Alex shifted uneasily on the bed and swallowed hard. He was silent for a long time before he spoke again, his voice shaking. "Ben is not the kind of man you can leave after a divorce. He's linked, he is. He belonged to a deadly motorcycle gang. I know enough, but not all the specifics. He is the kind of person who doesn't simply let things go. He will come after you, Kathy, if you pursue him or attempt to steal anything from him. It won't be a smack across the face, I promise. It will be worse." Kathy's heart began to pound. Although she was aware of Ben's difficult history, she had always taken it for granted. She was unaware of the true dangers of his history. Alex was trembling now, and you could see the terror in his eyes. "Kathy, Ben isn't your typical man. I was foolish to believe that we could defeat him. You will be tagged if you attempt to steal anything from him when you are divorcing him. There's a whole other degree of risk involved. It's not just Ben, either. The whole gang will be furious with you. You will not escape. They'll track you down. They will ruin your life. You must go, and you must depart immediately. No divorce, no nothing. Simply leave. Kathy's mind was racing as she remained still. The dread in Alex's eyes was genuine, even if his words felt like a smack in the face. This was not a pointless danger. She had never known that Ben's history was much more hazardous. Although she had always thought of Ben as weak and under her control, it was now obvious that she had misjudged him and his history. She had never expected the guy who had previously seemed to be the ideal victim to be something so much darker. Kathy mumbled, almost to herself. I didn't know. Her thoughts were racing. She had plotted several times to exact vengeance and steal everything from Ben, but now? She was unsure now if she could follow through. Alex's explanations made too much sense. Alex, Kathy murmured in a shaky voice. Now what should I do? Alex's voice became hardly audible. You take no action. You leave in silence. You're not just battling him if you attempt to prolong this out or defeat him. You're opposing all of his affiliations. You will also lose. You must get away from him immediately, prior to it being too late. Kathy's hands were trembling as she gazed at him. She had made a nightmare for herself and was stuck in it. A cold, frightening reality crept over her as the terror took hold. She had lost her position of authority, and now it was obvious. Ben's world was going to take over her whole existence if she didn't pay attention to Alex and just go. In the days after Kathy's rash choice, the mood in town changed. 70 motorcyclists, each on their enormous motorcycles, patrolled the streets with a constant, menacing presence while the sound of screaming engines filled the air. Everywhere throughout the town, the sound of their roaring engines served as a continual reminder of the strength that underpinned Ben's background. Tension seems to have thickened the air itself. With terror clouding her judgment and shattering her resolve, Kathy wasted no time. She went to see Alex's attorney, signed the divorce papers, and left empty-handed. No resources, no custody. The settlement served as a sobering reminder of how little power she still has over her life. Although Alex had reassured her that it was best for her, Kathy knew deep down that she was leaving town to salvage what was remained of her life, not only to get away from Ben. Kathy signed the paperwork and left 5 days later. Without saying anything to anybody in town, she hurriedly packed her belongings, took just what she could carry, and departed. She vanished as quickly as she had arrived. Her name is now but a passing rumor. Alex, however, was not so lucky. His experience with Ben's world had only just started, notwithstanding his previous bluster. A persistent presence hovered at his bedside throughout the 7 days he spent in the hospital recuperating from his wounds. 2 bikes showed up during visiting hours every day. He never heard from them. He was never affected by them. They were not obliged to. They just sat in silence, staring at him, frigid and unblinking. He was always sluggish and in discomfort when he woke up. Those 2 guys were there, observing in silence. It was a message, not only a warning. Every visit served as a warning that Alex had gone too far and was now vulnerable to forces that were completely beyond of his comprehension. They did not have to talk. He was always in a state of terror just by being around them. As the days passed, Alex couldn't get rid of the sensation that he was being assessed and judged, not just for his past actions, but also for his potential future actions. And he always knew there was nothing he could do as he gazed up at them. When Alex was eventually released from the hospital after 7 days, he knew that he had barely avoided a destiny that was much worse than anything he could have ever dreamed of. His fate had already been decided, and it was no longer in his control. He had discovered the hard way that not all men could be intimidated, and not all conflicts were intended to be waged. Some guys had whole universes behind them, realms that could bring you to your knees without you having to do anything. Once again, his journey from the hospital to his house was a nightmare. He was accompanied by 70 bikers. After being discharged from the hospital, Alex's life gradually fell apart. He first attempted to go on with his usual activities, but the motorcyclist's constant gaze followed him everywhere. In the background, at the gas station, on street corners, and in the shadows of alleys, they were always there. They were always one step behind him, watching, waiting, regardless of how quickly or how far he attempted to go. He first believed it to be a coincidence. Perhaps it was just paranoia brought on by the severe beating he had received. However, reality crept in as the days went by. They were making sure he couldn't get away, not simply following him. No matter where he walked or where he made an effort to hide, there were always 2 or 3 of them around, still and motionless, watching him like animals preparing to attack. Alex struggled to find the strength to take action. He considered calling the cops. He had a whole narrative to tell about Ben and Kathy, the gang, the threats, and the ongoing monitoring. However, he was always stopped by something when he attempted to act. A deep, gnawing uneasiness in his belly caused him to become immobilized with panic upon seeing the motorcyclists. He was unable to get rid of the thought that going to the police would not help. They were everywhere. Then, one day, Alex was on his way to the local police station when he was abruptly halted. He saw a familiar face across the street as he was strolling down the sidewalk. The town's police chief, of course. But seeing him wasn't the only thing that surprised Alex. It was the chief's leather motorcycle jacket. It was the identical one with the distinctive patch that the bikers wore. Alex felt his heart fall to his gut. Like a freight train, the understanding struck him. This was not only a neighborhood gang. They lived in this town. The bikers were more than a band of outlaws. They permeated every aspect of the city, including the police department, and were ingrained in its very fabric. He stopped and stared at the police chief, who passed by with an expressionless face. Alex was not even looked at by the chief. However, the message was unambiguous. This could not be avoided. Alex had no idea that the village was governed by individuals who reported to a much more sinister entity. Alex's mind started to wander. He was unable to ignore it any longer. He wasn't merely being followed by the motorcyclists. He was under their power, ensuring that he realized there was nowhere safe. No escape. Not only were the bikers keeping an eye on him, but the same organization he had previously thought would keep him safe was also doing so. Alex knew what he had to do since he had no other choice. He was unable to remain. He was unable to fight. Not in opposition to Ben's reality. Not in opposition to the motorcyclists who seemed to have entered every area of the town. His only option was to go. Alex packed what little he had left that evening. He kept it to himself. There was no purpose. The motorcycle riders had prevailed. He was broken by them, positioned him in a corner. They had also ensured that he had nowhere to go to, no one to look to. Disappearance was his final option. To disappear from the location where he had lived. Prior to their choosing for him, he was gone the next morning. So he left behind all he knew. Alex couldn't help but feel a weird feeling of relief as he drove out of the town that had choked him. He wasn't harassed anymore, no longer observed. However, he was aware that the shadows would always be there, waiting, no matter where he walked or where he made an effort to hide. He was marked by the bikers, and Ben would never forget it because of the boundless scope of his universe.